Alright fellas, here we are back in Pokemon Masters, and today we're going to be looking at Nate and Haxorus at 3 out of 5 EX with the Field EX roll. So it's a pretty big upgrade from where we went in the last video, which he was at 1 out of 5 without an EX or the EX roll. So yeah, very big jump. But yeah, Nate benefits immensely, not just from 3 out of 5 and EX, of course, but immensely from the Field EX roll. Like, it's night and day. In my opinion, if Nate got any other EX roll, he would be far worse than he is at the moment right now. I'd say he's good. I would say he's good for now, and pretty great, too. Like, he's a very strong character. But without the added bonus of the Field EX, oh boy, it'd be pretty bad. Anyway, I'm not going to go over the full grid. I'm just going to go over the grid that we have active for him. And this is the grid. This is the grid you will use probably 99% of the time you use this character. Maybe a slight variation depending on if you want to pick up extension on Unova Passion. But really, this is what you're going to go for. If you're using Nate, you're very, very likely going to go for just this grid. And the grid pretty much just consists of all of his nuking nodes, which adds up to 240% in multipliers, as well as having Dragon Zone damage reduction, but that doesn't matter. It's not a big thing. But then the Unova Circle moves up 3, giving him a 30% power buff to his Scale Shot and his Dark Black Outrage, as well as having a Sync node here. So, yeah, this guy, he's got some pretty good stuff. Very easy to activate all of his nodes as well. Haymaker, he maxes out attack from his passive. He buffs speed from his trainer move and from using Scale Shot. And he can apply the Unova Circle, obviously, by himself. So yeah, Nate's going to be absolutely insane. Let's go ahead and pop into some stages. Alright, so here is Nate versus Dragon Week with a full Unova setup. Obviously, this is going to be a wash. It was pretty much a wash when we used him last time for 1 out of 5, but now it's even more so an indication, right? We use Colress for defense debuffing. We use Elisa here to get to our sync faster because we don't need to buff. We just need to sync as fast as we can so we can then Dark Black Outrage the enemy into total annihilation, which is what Nate does, and he does it quite effectively too. So we go ahead, set up here and whatnot, use the Screeches, get the enemy to minus, I think we go to -4, and I was going to go higher, but the enemies don't live. Just spoiler alert, they don't live the sync because I didn't build them with enough HP because they need to be built with HP to be able to actually survive what Nate can put out. So yeah, as you can see here, wallop, goodbye, 40,000 damage sync move, 50,000 on the sides, and they're gone. Vadios. Vamos. Goodbye. So, very strong, obviously, on type. So this was mostly just a case of, like, how hard can his numbers hit? Sadly, we did not get to use the Dark Black Outrage, but I think the sync move is a good enough indication. It doesn't really matter too much. But there's a lot of strikers that can one-hit KO enemies with their sync move, right? Like, but really, there was 0 damage there. Absolutely 0 damage, just from 100% health to 0, which is relatively impressive, I guess. But whatever, it's not really the big focus. The big focus is what we want to see with Nate off-type, as well as how much damage he can do with his Dark Black Outrage, with the new multiplier, as well as, of course, the Sync Nuke with all the multipliers active. So after showing the grids here, let's go ahead and go over to an off-type showcase and see how well Nate's able to obliterate that. So here we have Nate off-type versus Laurelia with Hilda and Fall Caitlyn. So we've still got ourselves the triple Unova setup for the maximum Unova Circle and Unova Master passive, as well as Hilda gaining a direct buff from all of those abilities, meaning she's going to be looking quite a bit stronger. And then Fall Caitlyn, of course, just here for our tank. That's pretty much all you really need to say. And then we also use her for a little bit of gauge management because you can definitely use it. Stage definitely does not like, Caitlyn does not like having the half HP parameter and a lack of actual reliable healing before her sync move. So it's a little bit fun just to see her nearly go down to an Ice Beam. But thankfully, you know, she lasts until sync, which is her only real job here, because then we go ahead and use Nate's sync move, use the Flare Blitz, and then we're able to queue up our Dark Black Outrage after it. And if we look at the sync move here, which is fully maxed out, by the way, you know, Haymaker, Speedster sync, all that stuff, the Unova Circle sync up, 15,000 damage off type on the first sync move. Yeah, that's strong. Because Nate was putting up about that same amount on type with 1 out of 5, right? So now he's doing it off type, which is very, very good. 30,000 damage with +5 on the Dark Black Outrage. Very, very strong, right? Because you do technically want to, for the most part, ramp up your physical moves next for your Dark Black Outrage. so ramping him up as much as possible, then using it is definitely very, very good, especially under the Dragon Zone now and whatnot, so makes him look a lot stronger. And then Hilda there, she gained a considerable buff, about 4,000 damage per move is not too bad. Obviously the enemy's having more health now because of the 3,000 points is gonna make her age a little bit more, but it wasn't too bad overall, I'd say. We're able to use some good strength, and of course, again, Hilda gained a great buff from the power of the master passives, plus the Unova Circle, and obviously she didn't have Sun Up, so you could have done a little bit better, I guess, but you don't really need to. Anyway, yeah, that was the Nate off-type showcase. 15k first sync, as well as 30,000 on the Outrage is definitely very, very good. Here we are versus Laurelia again, which I didn't actually mean to do. I didn't even think about it. But this is actually a showcase where we use some pretty funny parameter setups. We actually use the ally stat down 3 parameter, which in the setup is using Anniversary Steven and making it so obviously, you know, gets fully inverted, right, with his good downside up passive. And we're also just using a general showcase to do Nate with 0 Unova allies. Because why not, right? May as well see how he works without the allies. And then we obviously have Nate's trainer move, which reverses, not reverses, but it resets any stat changes, or any negative stat changes. So all those -3 stats go back to neutral, and then we raise our attack from our passive. The only one who has lowered stats is our support in this setup, which we really just don't care about. So it works out for us. We go ahead and use Nate's sync move again, off type without any Unova allies. About the same number, except there's minus defenses this time. So obviously that's the big difference. Also, Steven gaining a pretty big buff from obviously having the Master Passive from himself, and Nate as well as Nate's Unova Circle, getting some decent damage on Dragon Ascent, and then Nate obviously just wrecking them with the Dark Black Outrage. So really, even with Nate, you don't need even one Unova ally to make him look good, because I would say just building him with either Dragon rebuff or defense debuffs, that type of thing, it can make him look still relatively impressive, I would say. He can look just fine, same as having other Unova characters, right? But obviously, for his better setups, you're going to want to hyper-tune some specific teams and whatnot. Like, obviously, Battle Tower Leon, amazing partner. Emmett, pretty strong partner as well. And Emmett's obviously benefiting from this Unova Circle and applying Unova, you know, related buffs. And then Battle Tower Leon's obviously benefiting from the Dragon Zone and whatnot. So, yeah. That was the showcase for Nate with enemy stat down parameters as well as no Unova allies. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Alright, here we are versus Blue, and this is a half Unova setup, but it's also kind of a setup to use Scale Shot, which, by the way, don't. You never really ever want to use Scale Shot. You're going to be missing out on some physical moves next for your Dark Black Outrage if you do use it, and even if you do want to, you don't care about that, it's really not worth it to pick up the stuff in the grid like I did. As you can see, it doesn't really do anything for you. But I did pick up the stat physical boost up whenever we get our stats debuffed, so free physical moves next, I guess? I don't know. But in this setup, we are missing out on some nuking nodes, which does suck quite a bit. I was going to try and use Dark Black Outrage there, but I queued up my moves in the reverse order, so it didn't work out for me. Definitely should have just queued up the Unova Passion first, but oh well, it's not really a big problem. There we go, we get ourselves +5 physical moves next, and then we go ahead and start using our Dark Black Outrage to do some good off-type damage here. No Dragon Zone, of course, because we lack we didn't use Nate's sync move, so no Dragon Zone there, and obviously only partially activated Unova Circle and Unova Master Passive. We don't KO that side, which was pretty useless, but it doesn't really matter, we end up winning anyway. It's not the biggest issue in the world. There is, I guess, some decent damage with the Scale Shot. I don't know, it was like, what, 3,000, 4,000 damage? I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world. It could definitely be better. But mostly this was also using Dojo Gloria's sync ramping as well as Nate's ability to sync ramp. A little bit of sync ramping, not really too much. Because of his sync countdown on the Dark Black Outrage, it was pretty useful here. And then obviously Gloria, with her whole Head Start 1+ sync countdown on her trainer move thing, was pretty useful for getting a lot of sync moves in here quickly. Sadly, we do not KO with this Urshifu. It would have been nice, but it's fine. We KO with the Dark Black Outrage. This time it's at +2 instead of at +5, so does a little bit less. 21,000, still pretty good. I think it does less, I don't know. It was single target actually this time, so it definitely did more to the middle because it was the only thing left alive. So yeah, I think that just mostly shows why you would never want to use Scale Shot, because picking up a lot of the stuff for Scale Shot, you have to sacrifice your nuking nodes, which nuking with Nate is just better. I would say that using the support EX outside of an EX role Most of the time is just not worth it because Nate's sync move being able to KO enemies, the sides specifically, just enables his Dark Black Outrage to do its full maximum damage, and it won't be lowered by having multiple enemies, so you can hit for its full power. You don't really have to worry about that too much, and obviously not having to worry about the sides in general is just a good thing for a lot of stadium battles. In other content, such as a Legendary Arena, his Sync Nuke's going to KO most sides no problem, and if it doesn't, then the Dark Black Outrage will just KO. It doesn't really matter too much there. And stuff like High Score Event, we'll just have to see what the parameters are and whatnot for that, but I think Nate could definitely be quite good in it. He's got himself very good self-sufficiency. He's got himself, obviously, the Universe Circle for powering up allies, so he's got a lot of good, strong abilities that he can make use of in the High Score Event specifically, and of course just his damage is already very, very good. So being able to potentially partner him up with someone like Champion Iris, or maybe regular Iris, I don't know how well she would do, could potentially be extremely strong in that game mode. Definitely an overall good pick for it. Outside of that, I can't really think of any other game modes off the top of my head. I wouldn't say he's good for off-typing extreme battle events. He's too inconsistent with his damage to probably be of much use, especially compared to other characters like Neo Champion Red, Adaman, Irida, these type of characters who can consistently put out a little bit more damage, or at least provide a little bit more. But obviously, Universe Passion, very, very good ability there. So yeah, overall, Neo Champion Nate, with the 3 out of 5 EX and the Field EX role, he's very strong. Unconditionally, I would say he's extremely strong, and he's definitely worthy of the Master Fair title. Maybe a little bit worse due to his clunkiness, compared to other Master Fairs, but I think that's just going to happen. But I would still say that as a unit overall, he is definitely very, very strong.